Hello, everybody. Welcome to Justice Served Daily. Glad you could be here today. Wow. I'm going to warn right at this very moment that probably about 30 minutes ago, while I'm sitting here, I had some sirens hit and I thought, oh, it's not Friday. Those were tornado warning sirens. Good news, sirens stopped. There's not a tornado here. And so, yeah, right. So, but the only reason I just brought that up is because my lights just flickered. But that's okay. This should have enough battery to keep running during the whole time. I would like to welcome everybody who's here, and I want to welcome up on my panel is Mama Bear and Paige. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hi.
Look at them being all quiet. Hello. We're very quiet people. And I want to thank the mods and stuff and other members down there as well. So KA, we see you. And Evil CJ is here today. Thank you guys so much. And we are waiting for our guests. As you know, the Murder Sheet is going to be joining us. And we're excited about that. We have followed the Murder Sheet a lot for information and things like that. So, updates, and I know a lot of people do. And since we have followed from the Delphi case, that is us as well. And then look, I think I see them. Hold on one second, guys.
Yep.
Let me bring them up.
Got a hello.
There they are.
Hey, how are you guys?
Hi, guys.
Yay.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you for coming.
It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah. I was warning them about. I had a tornado warning siren about 30 minutes ago. Don't worry. I know. It's over, right? And my dogs came back in the house, so I didn't lose a dog, right? I didn't lose a dog. The house is still up. But right as we started, my lights just kind of blinked off and on.
We did ours.
But I think I have enough charge. And let me tell you right now, I've been so excited about this. I already told the ladies, if I have to be sitting in my bathroom on the toilet to do the Murder Sheets show, I will do it. That is what I will do.
Well, thank you. We've been really excited about it too, and thank you guys so much for having us. And I'm gonna say, I was freaking out too because I was like, if we lose power on JSD, I'm gonna feel so bad.
It's like, man, the powers that be are trying to stop the show.
I know what's happening. Oh my gosh.
Yes. So yeah, I was expecting like weather may be bad in the middle of the night, but not like right now in the middle of the afternoon. But it got crazy, like warm, and like Indiana doesn't accept that weather, so it goes into a fit and says, "No, you're not supposed to be like normal people. Go back to 40 degrees, right?
You need to suffer."
Exactly. Well, I want to introduce the Murder Sheet, Aine and Kevin. As you know, or maybe you don't know, Aine CAIN is a journalist and attorney, Kevin GREENLEE. And as you saw on the thumbnail that I created, I put the heart to heart. And the reason I do that is because I've got to know Aine and Kevin lately for a while. And I think we've become pretty good friends. We joke around with each other. I mess with them a lot. But one thing I tell them is they're like my heart-to-heart couple. They are like my real life heart-to-heart true story. Like, you know, if you've ever watched Heart to Heart, guys, that's when they talk about like, and they brought them together was murder, right? That was like the intro of that show. So guys, you've got to tell everybody why you are my heart-to-heart couple and how you all met.
Absolutely. And yeah, thank you so much. We're not millionaires like on Heart to Heart, but just to flag, but it's a really delightful show. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. So as JSC mentioned, I'm a journalist. I was looking into a murder case here in Indiana, the Burger Chef murders. for an article. I was sort of, looking at the newspaper archives, clipping articles online. And then one day I got this weird email from a weird guy I didn't know in my inbox. And I was like, huh. And that was Kevin.
I noticed he was clipping.
The weird guy's Kevin.
That's right. I noticed he was clipping a bunch of articles about this burger chef murder case. And I happened to represent one of the sisters of one of the victims in that case. So it just got me curious. And I couldn't figure out why this journalist in New York was writing or reading about a murder case in Indianapolis. And I tried to figure it out. And I finally said, well, what the heck? I'll just write her and ask her and see what happens.
Yeah. And so he wrote me. We connected. I did an article, did the whole, publishing thing. And we sort of stayed in touch afterwards and became friends. And then eventually we were like, oh, we're kind of like weirdly the same person, even though we have very different backgrounds and like are in love with each other. Oops. So then we eventually got married, and then we started, actually the podcast came before the marriage, but we kind of have just been sort of life and business partners ever since. And it's been really, really fulfilling. And I'm crazy about him. It's nice.
I love it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Isn't it sweet?
So sweet.
It is
It's
adorable.
My heart goes pitter-pat.
I know.
It's like a
Aw.
story.
By the way, Aine and Kevin right now up on panel with me is two of our channel researchers, a couple other in the stream, but Mama Bear and Paige are up here as well because they have questions. And I will say that there was some nervous vibes possibly happening prior to.
Not at all.
And because
I don't know what
it
you're
is
talking
because
about.
they're like, man, these are like celebrities, man. These are like
No.
celebrities. To us in true crime, you're celebrities. So don't even.
Thanks.
So we're just like, wow,
Yes.
we get to talk to him, have him on. And I was like, okay, we just pretend like we're just having a regular conversation like normal about the case, and it'll all be fine and all be great. And we were going through your shows and, seeing what stuff we remember that we had questions and stuff about.
Yeah.
And so, and are trying to time ourselves and everything with it. So, so I know that both Mama Bear and Paige both had some questions too about kind of your initial beginnings and stuff like that. Mama Bear, you want to ask your question?
I would love to. First, I would love to say to the two of you, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's a complete honor. So thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having me.
much. But my big question is, what draws you to the cases that you cover? I'm really intrigued with that.
That's a great question. And I would say that generally it used to be, I think, when we were just true crime consumers chatting with each other about cases, it would be like anything that's complex, oftentimes unsolved cases, because there's like, what happened? There's no resolution. How do we figure this out, basically? As far as the murder sheet goes, we tend to want to do cases where we can add value. And that, that basically means if something's very, well covered, we definitely will take that on, but we just want to make sure we're doing it like we have a new voice or some analysis or something to bring to the table that kind of adds something, as opposed to just covering it for the sake of covering it. So that tends to be whatever that may be, whether it's a new interview, some new research, bringing something new.
And we feel a special connection to unsolved cases because those are cases where potentially someone in the audience might have some information, maybe without even realizing it, that might help bring some closure to people. People contact us all the time with cases that affect them and their families, and we really try to get to as many of those as we can.
That's so special. Well, thank you for answering my question. I appreciate it.
Paige?
Hi guys, it's nice to actually speak to you. I'm a little bit sick, so I'm so sorry. But my question is more in regards to the Delphi case, because it's something that I've been passionate about for so long. But I just wanted to ask, when did you first hear of, what happened to Abby and Libby, and what made you want to investigate this story?
great question, Paige. I know I heard about it when it first happened. It was a national story pretty quickly. And I remember I have sisters who are, you know, close in age, and like something about like them going out and Snapchatting and kind of doing little pictures just reminded me of like things my sisters would do. And so that really like upset me on a visceral level. I remember me and my mom in the kitchen talking about it and just being like, I was kind of dumb. I was like, well, they have him on camera. They're going to catch him soon. And like that has kind of haunted me ever since, because like my assumption that it would get resolved quickly turned out to be totally nonsense. And I was like, it just kind of has stuck with me since, because I was always like, why is this still unsolved? Like, what is going on in this case? And I think Kevin had a different.
Yeah, when I first heard of it when it first happened, and I think I also had a general idea that would probably be solved soon. I admit I didn't pay a terrible lot of attention to it at first. I didn't follow it super closely. When Anya and I met and got together, she's a New Yorker, and I went to Brooklyn, and we lived together in Brooklyn for a while. And when we moved back to Indiana in early 2021, my sister, Laura, said, you guys really, really have to cover the Delphi case. And that was the first time I really took a hard look at all the details of it. And I realized that she was right. It was an important case that deserved to be covered.
And I think we both realized early on we wanted to apply journalistic fundamentals to it. So we didn't want to take the tack of like, oh, here's who we're guessing did it. We wanted to take a tack of like, what do the cops think? And like get that out there, because we just felt like there was so much speculation, and that was understandable. People wanted to help. You know, people were like, who could it be? Is it this guy? Is it that guy? But we felt like we could do the most beneficial thing for the case if we actually did some reporting and called people and were like, hey, what's actually going on, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's why what you guys have brought to this case is given so much value, because of how you present it and how you talk about it. And I just want to thank you for answering my question. That was great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
As you can tell, Paige is not from Indiana.
Yes.
But we gathered together because all of us would follow a bunch of different true crime shows that on YouTube, and we all kept seeing each other talking about Delphi, and that's how we all ended up getting together. That's awesome. But Paige is definitely across the pond, and we love her, and I love her accent, and I love everything about it. And I think it really, though, speaks to how much attention this case has really gotten, across the world, period, from everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm looking, obviously the Delphi case is what a lot of our people follow us for as well, and that we talk about. And so, just kind of going back to the beginning, as we've done, and we went back to certain shows that we've listened to you of that maybe that we have or feel like our audience would have questions about. And also, just rehashing and looking back at the timeline, which are, we keep jumping back into two names, which happen all the time, which are Richard Allen and Keegan Klein. And, when you go back to the timeline and then find out about Richard Allen admitting to being on the location, and then Keegan Klein, ironically, if we go through the timeline without really knowing back then, both of them were actually kind of a little bit, at least, on the radar in 2017.
Yeah.
Because we have them where we have the search of Keegan Klein's house that was on February 25th when he returned from a Vegas trip. Now, that did not specifically have to deal with the Delphi murders, but it did have to deal with the CSAM and the social media connection of his. And then we also know during those first dates that Richard Allen decided to speak to a conservation officer instead of a actual police officer. So, and let me know if I'm making any weird sounds at all. Am I making weird sounds at all, or
I think the computer is.
is the computer? It could be. Yes, blame the computer. It's not me.
The computer.
Yeah.
What a ridiculous thought I even had. I'm so sorry. So when I look back to some of that stuff and looking back in your guys's shows, which by the way we terribly watch and listen to and re-listen to and over again.
Religiously.
Yeah.
A little
And
bit.
so we never miss an episode also because Paige makes sure to drop it in our Discord every time.
We appreciate that.
She's
As
up
soon as I
before
get a
us, so,
notification.
you know, she's up at like 5 a.m. dropping it up at our time. So
Our time, yes.
So when I'm looking at some of the questions that I have from some of your updates, so one of the things that I looked at was your August 22 update show, and in that particular show, this is when you guys went to the Wabash River. You got the tip of going in there, and you know, looking and seeing that people are searching the water and doing all of that. And then we know that all of a sudden, while this is going on, we have retrial dates and negotiations going on. And Doug Carter, right, flying out to encourage them to proceed with all of these, you know, charges and everything. One of the things that sticks out of my mind, though, that brought out all of these things that you guys brought forefront and let the public realize it was the FBI. So I want to clarify because some people know and some people don't know about it. But so one of the things early on in any investigation, when they are looking for stuff, they like to go get any nearby cameras, right? On any trial whatsoever. They're looking for Ring cameras or whatever. So we have two things that the FBI, there were shows that you talked about, the FBI and not obtaining the Marathon gas station video. And I'm avoiding my rant because we don't have that kind of time. And possibly, I say possibly because I know you had pushback from the FBI afterwards about maybe the filing of the Richard Allen discussion with others. Can you kind of guys touch base on that and kind of help clarify a little bit that with everybody?
Totally. So yeah, the FBI has been involved in the Delphi case from almost the very beginning. They were very much with law enforcement and the local agencies.
In fact, Doug Carter had a pretty good personal relationship with the guy that ran the Indianapolis office of the FBI.
So that guy claimed.
At least that's what that guy claimed.
So you know, they were very much involved when it's a case of children being missing and then murdered, even though there's not really, you know, there's no crossing state lines. They're going to be involved and they're going to be basically partners. And so our understanding is that part of that was that it would be basically going around to different businesses in Delphi and obtaining relevant footage from, you know, cameras and whatnot in order to aid the investigation. And our understanding is that FBI agents did go to the Marathon gas station in Delphi to attempt to obtain that. There was some sort of technical issue where they weren't able to do their usual thing. And what happened was, you know, they basically, the gas station was trying to work with them. They didn't come back. They didn't come back to like fix the situation.
And that became possibly relevant later because once investigators started paying more attention to Keegan Klein and going through the electronic and digital trail he left, they found that on the day that the girls went missing, he had actually Googled or
done some sort
of phone search for the
or device search
to be as
big as possible. We don't know the answer.
Yes, he did some sort of digital search for the location of that Marathon gas station in Delphi.
So the FBI had no way of knowing that would be relevant, but the fact that they didn't collect that Marathon tape is very important because it's gone as far as we understand. And that could have been really relevant to just at least, look at, do we see anything familiar?
Or it could have been completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
Just because someone does a search for a location doesn't mean necessarily they're going to go to that location. But the fact that he did the search on the very day the girls went missing at least raises a significant possibility that he did that search for a reason. And then, in fact, he went to that location on that day. But if he did, and if he showed up on camera, there's no longer any evidence of it because the FBI failed to collect that footage.
We reached out to the FBI for comment on that story. They didn't get back to us. And they also did not release any public pushback. So I don't know what you make of that. The next time we reported on the Delphi FBI sort of link was later on when we were talking about essentially our understanding from multiple sources is that basically there was a clerical error that delayed a thorough investigation into Allen for years, and that there would have been some sort of involvement of an FBI civilian employee in that clerical error, essentially. Again, we reached out to the FBI for comment. Sources can get things wrong. So this is one of those things. They publicly pushed back against that and said, no, it wasn't us. Our sources, and again, I say multiple sources, stuck by what they said. So we're in a position where we tried to kind of like basically go to the FBI and say, listen, like, if there's an alternative explanation, we got something wrong, we'd love to talk with you. They didn't get back to us. So we don't, that's one of those things. If it turns out it wasn't the FBI's civilian employee where they were kind of getting something in error, then we'd obviously want to retract that and say like, okay, here's the real facts. But at this point, we're kind of, it seems to be at least the understanding of our sources that is correct.
And our sources are people we trust highly.
Yeah.
And it may be worth noting that a week or two ago, we talked to another pretty reliable source who's completely independent of the others. And we got the same information from that.
So at the very least, there seems to be an understanding on the ground that that's what happened. Now, again, we say sources get stuff wrong. We don't run with people who we feel like are just trying to set an agenda or like spread rumors or like get into fights with, people they don't like. So, that can happen.
You mean YouTube?
Oh, yeah, the YouTube factor, the YouTube syndrome. But, you have to be aware that when you're using anonymous sources, people might try to spin you. Like if I don't like Kevin, I might go, to the Indianapolis Star and be like, that Kevin, he's kind of a jerk. So you have to be very careful with that. And you have to go with like facts and sort of what people are independently saying and corroborating each other.
And it's also very important to have multiple sources. Don't just let one person, even if it's a person who should know that information, don't let that one person be your single source. You need to get more than one person to confirm.
Like even if like this is a silly example, but even if your source is like Sherlock Holmes, like he's the greatest detective, he knows everything, you probably also want to talk to Watson and Lestrade just so you're getting a full picture of what happened, essentially.
Right. Well, one, and can I point that out? That's the other thing. I'm just bragging about you guys too. I mean, the one thing is that when we get information about cases that you guys do, that's what's great, because it's not the rumor mill. It's not, Mr. Chatty Catty over here who's just saying what they heard out on the street. You guys are getting multiple sources before you release things. You're getting great from sources. And that's from your own experience of one, being an attorney and a journalist. I mean, that's why I've always said you guys are that perfect couple who came together to do true crime. And I'm not, guys, I always talk to them this way. So don't act, this is not unusual. I always just, don't I really do that. I talk how wonderful they are.
Yes, she does.
And say how great that they are. So let's get to the little bitty nitty gritty of this one. This one's the one that bugs a lot of people. And that is Mr. Richard Allen didn't go talk to a police officer. And when you go back to the original timeline and you see that the police release the photo, because it was not released as a video first, a photo of the guy on the bridge who they believe could have seen the girls or whatever. They left it open. We want to identify this person on the bridge, which was fairly early. I have the date in here. And then we know within that supposedly first 2 weeks of the murder, that Richard Allen decided to meet outside a grocery store. I'm going to emphasize grocery store, right? With a conservation officer, which I am not a journalist nor an attorney, but I find that a little odd for a man who's going to say, I was at the site of a murder, to go meet outside of a grocery store to tell somebody I'm there, and then you don't know where that paper floated from that point on. What are your guys' thoughts? Because I wondered always if Richard Allen may have had a relationship, maybe they knew each other, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about it, because another odd thing, frankly, is that this conversation was not with an FBI official. It was not with a member of the state police. It was not with the sheriff's department. It was with a conservation officer.
Yeah, I think JSD, you summed it up. Like we don't have a lot of facts about that interaction. We don't have any facts about whether he knew the person or what exactly happened, but we share your sort of opinion that it's very odd. And I am speculating here, but I almost feel like it tells us something about the early days of this investigation. We don't know exactly when this happened. We don't know if this was, necessarily before the bodies were discovered or after the bodies were discovered, or like when, what temporally, like where was this situated? And that I think would tell us something too. But it speaks to an investigation that, at least in its early stages, almost seems to be, I'm not going to use any derogatory terms like haphazard, but I will say like maybe a bit chaotic. Like, like people are running into each other. Hey, can I talk to you really quickly at the grocery store? Things are not necessarily being done through like your typical law enforcement officers. Things are being done through auxiliary people who may have volunteered or maybe sort of helping out. I would be very curious to know at this point, did they know it was a homicide case, or are they just trying to talk to people who may have seen which direction the girls went in? And, it's very odd. And it's also very odd that seemingly nothing was followed up on from that point, because, I can understand perhaps sending, if you're like the conservation officer, you run into this guy, hey, we wanted to talk to you. Can I just talk to you really quick? Like, give me your information. But then I don't understand why that's not like followed up on. I don't understand why you don't have like a master list of all like the males who were on the trail that day, kind of going through and being like, listen, guys, we're just trying to rule you all out. Boom, boom, boom. And I don't know why he's not there. And so, yeah, it's a really intriguing question. And I wish we had more information about like what the heck happened, but like, it really does. I mean, about all of that's just basically speculation based on my own thoughts. It's not any inside knowledge, but I would love to know more about that whole thing.
Right. I think a lot of people in the public found that very frustrating, because you think of when somebody has a crime and then they keep casting out farther and farther from that crime. And when you get to Richard Allen, there wasn't much far casting out because he was so close. He was close in vicinity of employment. He was close in vicinity of job. And then you have a report that he's there than the actual hours that this happened to these poor girls. I mean, I feel, in my opinion, I feel like he had to come forward because he knew 3 girls were going to report seeing him. So he had to report he saw them because he was seen. And then that also jumps us to your guys' show that's called Muddy and Bloody, that you did about the witness that we all know about, that was also in the PSA. And by the way, you guys want to hear these shows, the Murder Sheet podcast, it's scrolling across the bottom. If you want to go hear the full accurate details of these 2 wonderful people having a conversation about it, go do it and join it, because it's great to follow and learn more details. So from that, it seemed very frustrating that he would have been, even if they didn't read that first document, they would have found him by just going through the town and, I don't know, maybe narrowing the vehicles that they were looking for, or age and weight and whatever, just by who has a driver's license in that area, that they could have narrowed it down to so many when you only have 3,000 in Delphi. Do you think it's because they were just thinking it's some guy out of town? Because most every time you heard the police say it's somebody familiar with Delphi, the area, lived here or used to live here kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like I don't think we know the answer. I think we can do some maybe educated speculation. But I mean, it strikes us, and our reporting is that, you know, whether or not, I mean, like boiling it down, Fox 59 also reported a clerical error being behind the delay. So they didn't go as far as to say the FBI was involved in it, but they independently had that as well. So a clerical error seemingly happens, and then 5 years pass, and it's like, you know, how does that happen? I think it's mind-boggling, because like we do know that there were so many resources put into this investigation. We do know that the people involved are dedicated. They want, you know, to get the answers. So it's frustrating when it's something so kind of like just like a mistake, you know, as opposed to, you know, anything more complicated than that. And then like as far as, you know, we don't really, it's hard to know, because so many people for so long have been basically trying to do like, you know, like soothsaying on what exactly police officials are saying, and they're trying to like interpret it like, oh, the reference to the shack in Doug Carter's 2019 press conference, or oh, here's what they said about the sketches. And like we understand the impulse there, but it's really hard for us to like do that, because it's like people can just say things and they don't necessarily mean something deeper, and without getting confirmation from the people who are saying those things, like, hey, did you mean this? Like it's kind of hard to interpret. So you kind of like, I mean, I think one thing that strikes me though about public statements from police for the number of years before Allen's arrest is that they kind of seem to be going in a few different directions. Like they would kind of say something, walk it back, say something, walk it back, say something vague, everyone freaks out about it. And I don't really know what to make of that. The fact that they released one sketch and then the other, it's like they're kind of like they're trying to pivot. And I don't think that necessarily means were doing a horrible job. I think like they were probably trying their best to get something happening. But
I think it's also worth remembering there's a number of different agencies involved in this investigation. And I don't know if that's exactly the case in this particular crime, but I know often we have multiple agencies investigating. Each agency kind of has their own ideas about what happened and how things should be done. And so when we see public statements, maybe a particular public statement is more representing the view of the FBI, or maybe this one's more representing the ISP. So that can lead to confusion.
We also know that in 2017, at least 2 people came up on the radar: Keegan Klein in February and Ron Logan in March. Right. So they're they're hitting a bunch of people. They're kind of running with that. And it's possible that it's just like they had enough to do with those people who came up on the radar that maybe there wasn't like an effort to go back through all the early things and make sure everything was filed correctly.
But that's just speculation.
We're speculating here.
Right. Well, we know that with the case with Keegan Klein that we have the incident of CSAM that we got busted for. We covered in depth of each device except the one that would have been current at the time that they got information from and that he had charges on. Again, those are 30 charges he was facing that have now been, some have been dropped, some have been lowered for the level from that. And then we know based on the information and interview that you guys shared with Barbara McDonald from Headline News and with the police that he did admittedly state that he was the creator of the Anthony Shots profile. And the reason that that's key in here is because we know somebody using the Anthony Shots profile communicated with Libby and was supposed to, as their comment said, meet with Libby on that particular day out there and stuff. So that's something for, at least for in my opinion, I know in our group as well, we can't we just can't ignore that connection that's still there, even though Richard Allen has been arrested as BG. I feel like there's some thought with Keegan. So which brings me to your guys' show that you did. You did an August 2022 update show, as well as a September update. And it shows about, one, you talk about that there was an order filed on August 19th of 2022 where the state of Indiana, with Miami County, transfer to the Indiana State Police custody. And again, I mean, my God, these people are tracking helicopters going in the sky, people. I'm just saying. They are watching it out here. But you talk about this helicopter trip that goes on the 19th. It's landing in Peru. It's there for about an hour and a half, in Peru when you're talking about September. And after this visit and stuff happens, the beginning of the Wabash River search starts. And I know from you guys going up there yourselves and having the first pictures of this all happening. Now, Keegan Klein, when he was transferred custody, in my opinion, I thought it was unique to go to Grissom Air Base instead. And you guys reported that there were a lot, I'm trying to think of the terms you use, but lots of law enforcement people there. So, and I'm assuming by lots of law enforcement, maybe more than state police and Carroll County or whatever, police there. But so Keegan's talking to the police about stuff about in the river search. The river search you guys reported was related to Delphi, and that you also talked about the big bomb that really hit everybody. Was like, oh my God, did you hear this? Go back and hear it. Was also about that in your September updates, even about Keegan Klein stating, while the murder was happening, I am waiting in a red Jeep that's there. Now, I do love that you guys acknowledge how much that we know Keegan Klein is possibly not that truthful. And that I agree with you. If anybody has ever looked at his Wikipedia, he very much exaggerates in everything about him. So I'm just saying.
He's not a truthful man.
So we know about that. So for me, the timing seemed, and it was, I feel, a huge coincidence that during this timing, we've got Keegan going into state police custody. We have the river search happening. It happens about maybe 5.5 weeks, approximately-ish, that they're searching and searching and searching. I know you guys report that your thoughts are they didn't find and not to make it sound like we're meaning a smoking gun, but a big clue. I'll put it that way, of anything like that. But then very soon afterwards, Richard Allen is also arrested. So I guess I have multiple questions on that. But
understandably,
it's a bull thing of questions and stuff from that. So do you think that Keegan Klein was called there to talk specifically about Delphi? Do you still feel that was why the river search happened? And do you feel that is connected at all, or could be connected, to Richard Allen being taken into custody?
I think a brief answer, and I'll extrapolate on, or I'll talk more about all of these, but I think yes, no. I think so. Whether he was talking about Delphi, whether the river search was about Delphi, yes, I think that
Definitely.
that was definitely about Delphi. That's what they were, there for, basically. And ISP's never come out and said that, but I think we're pretty confident about that.
Multiple sources.
Yeah. So we were like, yeah, that's Delphi related. They were talking to him about Delphi. I mean, he's already been charged with all these counts of CSAM. They're not continuing to interrogate him about that. That's all pending trial, essentially. But he does, as in the transcripts that we released indicates, they they very much are interested in what he has to say about Delphi. Now, whether or not that led to Richard Allen's arrest, I could totally understand why people think that, because it's like that summer it's Keegan Klein, and then October, boom, Richard Allen comes on the radar. So I think there's a tendency to be like, well, they must have got his name, or that one thing led to another. But we actually don't feel that it was Keegan Klein who gave them that name. We feel like it seemed to come up very quickly. It seemed to snowball, is what I'm saying, behind the scenes. And we were very much, we knew that there had been an arrest a few days in advance. We didn't know a name. We knew that it wasn't, we knew it wasn't Keegan.
Yeah.
And we were trying to, figure that out, but we were kind of like, wow, this is like something new has come up very much. It did not feel like it was a natural ending to the Keegan Klein stuff. So it's kind of been a curveball, I think. And I will be very curious to see if they are able to link Richard Allen with anybody else. People who've been named in the case so far, people who have not been named. They've kind of made comments to that effect of like, yeah, we're looking for other people, blah, blah, blah. You can read between the lines on that. But it's been pretty wild. But it seems almost as if a summer of very much focusing on the Klein angle then turned into an autumn where, everything we thought we knew, everything we thought, was the focus, has kind of taken a backseat to this new person who's come up, who's kind of buried under seemingly like a clerical error, but who's come back, I guess. And it's kind of frustrating. It doesn't really like fit a good narrative, because normally like in like police storytelling or, fictional stories, the thing is like, okay, one thing leads to another. You can't just pull out like a random suspect in the, final act and, expect your readers to be okay with that. But real life is so much more messy and complicated, obviously, than the story. So it's been interesting.
So what do you think about Keegan Klein stating that he is there at least during when the murder happened?
Yeah, that's something, and I'm so glad you picked up. I think a lot of listeners listened to that and they kind of maybe we were sounding boring that day, but they kind of like fell asleep during the whole like, he lies a lot, guys. He tells a lot of stories. And that's not just us being critical of him because he's been accused of a crime. I mean, we called every single business that he claimed to work for in Las Vegas and said, is this person a former employee of yours? And everybody came back to us. We never heard of this guy. We don't know this guy. This guy never worked here. It was not a situation where I felt they were all trying to cover and say, oh, we don't know him. I felt they were basically like, why is this guy dragging our name into it? So, he has a history of lying and making exaggerated claims. Do I believe that he was really in a red Jeep at the time of the murders? Not necessarily. I don't know. We do know that is what he told police at one point. So, the fact that he said that to police is interesting, and it's certainly newsworthy in our opinion, because it's like, what's going on there? And our whole goal is to cover like the investigation behind the scenes.
Right.
But as far as like, does it have any material bearing on the case? Not necessarily, because the source is so flawed that it would need to be corroborated for anybody to do anything.
Yeah,
with
without
that.
any backing evidence, all this is just a story. And maybe you believe the story, maybe you don't believe the story, but the police, law enforcement, prosecutors can't do anything with it unless they have evidence to back it up.
There are so many murders that attract false confessions from people who want attention, are dealing with some mental illness or whatever, for whatever reason. Maybe they're trying to negotiate something. I'll give you information on this if you give me that. And so for that reason, you need to have much more than, and also the way his story goes, right? He's in a red Jeep at the time of the murder, so he can't even give you any real information on like what occurred at the murder site that could be, helpful to kind of corroborate.
What seems odd to me is just that, you wouldn't think that he would put himself at the murder period, right? You wouldn't think he would put himself in discussions with them, that he would even be there. But the sitting in the Jeep could be the fact of, I'm not going to say that I was actually a part of something else, like, in there. And I think that with them still saying that the case is open and that they still want information, that part of that is I'm sure, and I've heard you many times, Kevin, talk about building the case, right? You use the term of building a case. And that if you only have Keegan Klein as the witness, then I would think that's not a go. You can't use Keegan Klein's information as the go for to try to press charges or something on someone.
Yeah, he's just not credible.
And like we were talking earlier about when we report, we always like to have multiple sources. That applies even more so in court. You need multiple sources. You can't just have one person say, "Oh, I was there." You need to have other people confirming that, or you need to have some sort of physical evidence he was there. We know there was at least some sort of a video from a store which captured some vehicles that were in the area. It would be interesting to know if it picked up a red Jeep.
Right. Right. So what did you feel about the multiple vehicles that were witnessed by people at the time?
Yeah, it was kind of weird because, I mean, we looked up some of those cars, and I think people who are more knowledgeable at cars, like I defer to them on this, because I'm not a car head, you know, like I don't know my Jeeps from my Fords or whatever. I don't even know if that's an apt comparison, but basically, the Hoosier Harbor Store cameras seemingly picked up vehicles, and a lot of like there's some seemingly discrepancies between what people were seeing. And I would be curious if, you know, I think prosecution will have to kind of explain that to a certain extent, or maybe show pictures of like, here's why they might have looked similar from, you know, different angles. But I feel like generally, like a lot of the car stuff in the probable cause affidavit against Richard Allen was a bit confusing, and I don't know if it seemed as solid as some of the other elements to me. To me, him putting himself at the scene in the time frame is really very interesting. And right. You know, and then the bullet, we've had some people who are more on the prosecution law enforcement side say that's really good evidence. We've had some people who are on the defense side say that's pretty weak. So I think that's probably like kind of going to be a battle of the experts thing, but it's still interesting. But the car is just kind of like, I was like, what, people are seeing a purple PT Cruise, like people are seeing all these weird specific cars, and sort of seems like that indicates to me that the camera footage is not super crisp, because I would imagine if it was, you could be a little bit more specific.
Right. Well, and I think that, you know, one of the other things that I think didn't help the case and stuff at the beginning, and I know something that you guys covered, although earlier in the timeline, but you addressed it in the Muddy and Bloody episode that you did. And one of the things that you talked about was the confusion with the sketches. And I mean, that came back to a lot of people in the community, that it was so confusing when that happened. I mean, we had, you know, the earlier sketch and then a later sketch, which people are like, wait a minute, they've been looking for this first guy for a really long time and try to identify it. And then suddenly you show somebody who looks way younger than the other one. And I know you guys talked about that confusion and issues that I think kind of, you know, hurt as far as public assistance, because, you know, you talked about the first was done by the FBI and the second was by the Indiana State Police. And then you have different witnesses who may have given information to one, you know, versus another. I think it got to the point where people just ignored the sketches altogether after that point, because they're like, I don't know which one to watch.
Yeah.
To look at.
I feel like sketches should be like, well, I mean, we've seen cases where sketches help solve it. We've seen other cases, like Burger Chef comes to mind, where the sketches are so vague and they're out there for years, and everybody's just like, everybody with a beard, you know, it must be them. And
but I can't recall seeing another case like this.
No.
Where two different sketches are released that don't really resemble each other, and the police are so vague and contradictory about what the sketches show. Because sometimes they say, well, the first sketch, don't even worry about that. We've already figured out who that is. Don't worry about it. Just look at the second sketch. And then sometimes they say, well, actually, maybe the sketches are the same person. Maybe if you lay one over the top of another.
Right.
And then at one point they issued a statement saying, no, they're definitely two people. And what was interesting about that is we were talking the other day with a person who's a longtime observer and pretty close student of this case. And this individual wasn't even aware that they'd issued a statement saying that the sketches were of two different people. So it feels like the communication there has not been
That's a
as
lot
well
to be
as it should.
desired. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So a question here, leading to my endings of some of the ones I had written down. So Kevin, can prosecutors negotiate
Yeah, I'm on the spot.
a plea deal? I'm gonna make him speak right now, Anya. It's all him right now.
Yeah.
Can prosecutors negotiate AKA plea deal a case that has not been publicly announced as charged?
That's complicated, but the answer, I guess, the short answer would be yes, because the prosecutors have an awful lot of discretion, and they can say, well, you're facing the possibility of all these charges in this case, and we'll go forward with these unless you help us out. So that is theoretically possible. I think it would be unusual because usually you want to negotiate a plea deal from a position of strength, and you have more strength if the person you're negotiating with is facing public charges. That makes it seem more real than saying, well, if you don't do this, maybe you'll be charged with murder. That's a different case than if that person is charged with murder.
Okay. So, but they could say that to them, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I could hypothetically say, you're going to get the death penalty for this because you're the only one who is saying you had any contact. So if you don't tell us something, you could face the death penalty, hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically, certainly, and certainly police can say anything like that they want. Police are able to say anything at all to people who are facing charges to try to intimidate them or scare them. Police are allowed to lie in a situation like that.
Okay.
Right.
My other one is as I put the other question, what are your thoughts on the reply? Because I shared with a lot of our watchers, the request of, and this is because they've taught me how to do it, Freedom of Information Act for the visitor log for Keegan Klein being denied that second part of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Could I read into that maybe that if the state police were pulling him out or people were talking to him and talking about the river charges and stuff like that, that may be why?
I would say we always encourage everybody to not read too much into anything, because in this case, there's always like alternative explanations that could, I mean, like in the case of what you're talking about, it's possible that maybe somebody higher up saw that we requested the logs and got them and were upset about that and then basically yelled at people. But at the same time, I'm not saying that happened, but I'm just saying like that's an alternative.
Right.
But I was JSU, when you got rejected for that, I was struck by that because I thought that was a bit odd. They gave it to us, a few months passed, you asked for the same thing but an updated timeline and they say no. I don't know. I don't read too much into it, but I don't also want to dismiss the possibility that there is something weird there. But also it could have just been like, you know, somebody just getting on the phone and being like, why did you give that to the murder sheet? Don't give them anything. And then being like, you know, being informed by that later on, if that makes sense.
I thought the reply was interesting because when it talked about it possibly being like criminal case related, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, you released it, they're already negotiating CSAM. Why would you hide now who's visiting him or whatever? It didn't make sense. Other than for me, and again, I'm not a journalist or an attorney, that I was like, well, wait a minute, this other talks and everything going on of them saying to search the river and do all this kind of stuff. They, you know, maybe they're the people visiting during that time. They just didn't want people to see what was going on, was my first thought. So
yeah, it's definitely a possibility. And I would say with the Klein angle of this case, it's so many people want to know, like, do we think that he or people associated with him are the other people who prosecution is like referencing when they're saying we're still looking at people, you know, what we're trying to get more people in on this. And we would say that, like, unfortunately, and this is not a good thing, but I mean, you can envision a situation where there may have been other people involved in what happened to Abby and Libby, But if there's no evidence to that, or evidence has been destroyed, we won't necessarily see them get adjudicated for the role that they played. And that's very upsetting to think about. But
Right.
it is unfortunately a possibility. Also a possibility that the Anthony Shots thing was a blind alley. I mean, that we have to say that, because coincidences do happen in law enforcement. I mean, most detectives don't like coincidences, but they can happen. We tend to think that it's highly relevant that an online predator was communicating with one of the victims shortly before her death. We tend to think that, like, you cannot just dismiss that. And given what happened, I mean, the possibility that a child could come across an online predator and an in real life predator just completely separated from one another seems hard to believe from our perspective. But
It's not impossible.
I do throw in the
Right.
caveats just because, like, it's, you know, you have to, basically.
I mean, the coincidence, it would be great. You know, because to have him admit Anthony Shots, to have him admit he you know, that it was communicating with Libby, at least, to say then he's trying to say that he was waiting somewhere. And then his conversations then evolved to a river search, which the river search has nothing to do with CSAM. I'm just saying, I don't think it has anything.
Yeah.
It makes it out there, but so Paige, Mama Bear, do you guys have any questions? Any other questions that you thought of while we were talking?
I just kind of had, like, I wanted your opinion basically on, like, we knew that when ISP did that report on December 6, 2021, you know, about the Anthony Shots account and how they wanted to find the person responsible for that account. And we later come to learn that it was Keegan Klein that was responsible for the account. But I just wanted your opinion as to whether you thought it was odd how the ISP, you know, they seemed like there was such a clear connection between the Delphi case and Anthony Shots at that point, but there's still no charges or anything against Keegan Klein in regards to Delphi. I wondered
Yeah.
if you thought that was odd.
It's very odd. My opinion is it's very odd. It seems like there's at least a circumstantial case to connect Anthony Shots with the murders, but at the same time, you do get indications from the transcript that we released that kind of note that, like, phones were missing, and, you know, maybe there's a situation where key evidence was unfortunately lost. That would be my speculation.
You might as well.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Mama Bear, anything from you?
I think my other question would be, again, this is just a hypothetical, it hasn't really been touched on, but, you know, I know we have discussed it amongst our group and so forth, but just as far as Tony, you know, potentially having some involvement. I mean, have you guys been asked about that, or what are your feelings? If you don't want to discuss it, I completely understand.
No, we can definitely. It's a great question. And it's a situation where in the transcripts, police are indicating that they believe 2 people were involved in accessing Anthony Shots in the household. So we tend to be still very interested in, you know, how cops are feeling about Tony right now. Are they thinking, is this a person who is still at that level of, like, looking at involved in the homicide case? Is this more of like a CSAM situation? You know, it bears saying that police do sometimes go down blind alleys, or they might say, okay, maybe it's this guy, and then it turns out it's actually that guy. So obviously he hasn't been charged, and that's highly significant, so we should note that. But when you have a person who's like kind of has the history that he does, and certainly it would be more around the age of Mr. Allen in this case, we'd be very curious, given that Allen came from Mexico, Indiana, and the Kleins are based in Peru, Indiana, and those are, you know, 5 minutes away from one another. Right. We're kind of interested in what those connections might be, and whether or not, you know, Tony's link to this is just as the father of somebody who did something horrible, or is accused of doing something horrible, or whether there's something more direct there. But we're kind of like, at this point, we're kind of just watching and saying, like, okay, how are things kind of coalescing at this point as we're hurtling towards a trial for Allen, basically.
Understand. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
So if we could if you don't mind us taking a few questions from the chat that's going on here.
Please do.
They said, do you think we will ever know the full story?
Oh man, that's a good question. And, like, I don't
I
know.
hope so.
I really hope so. I get kind of depressed about it sometimes, because sometimes it feels like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
if other people aren't charged and they sincerely feel that other people were involved, then we won't know the full story, I don't think. But if they're able to make charges stick against other people and come to the conclusion that others were involved and they're adjudicating that, I think that enhances the possibility that, or if they're able to clear it up and say, actually, it was just one guy. Here's why we're ruling the other stuff out. I think it really
Yeah.
depends. We're not confident either way at this point. Is that fair to say?
That's very sad.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's sad. It's 6 years.
It
I mean,
is.
do you feel that? Wait a minute. Do they think RA is one sketch and TK is the other, meaning Tony Klein, Richard Allen, and Tony Klein?
Yeah, I think people have pointed out that Tony and Keegan kind of more resemble the younger looking sketch, whereas Richard Allen more resembles the older sketch. I don't know. That's a boring answer. There's similarities there, but the sketches are so confusing, and the way they rolled them out are so confusing. I don't want to. It's like a really rickety table that I don't want to put a lot of weight on. You
A
know?
sketch is a sketch. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
How confident are they when the words "today was the day" were said?
I tend to. I mean, that's something that Becky
Richard
Patty,
Allen.
Libby's grandma, has sort of been kind of advocating for her granddaughter with, and so I think for her, the idea that like someone's been arrested, that is the day. That's the day that this is all going to start coming to an end. So we were incredibly happy for her, and certainly definitely understand that. I think for us, it's like, when's there going to be a conviction? When's someone going to truly be held accountable for the heinous situation that was inflicted on these girls, these families? So we're still kind of like in that holding pattern for now until we get more information via a trial or, a plea agreement, if that ends up being what's happening.
Have you ever got too close to a case? How did they get there, and how do they avoid it again if they did?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd like to think we haven't. I think we're able to kind of keep some professional distance. I can tell you that the Delphi case, I've been like there have been times where our reporting has like, it's just, and I'm sure you guys have this, because I want to say you guys have done amazing coverage on things like Yellow and the devices, but it's like, it makes you physically ill. It makes you sick to think about what happened to these kids and the CSAM angle. And so in that way, I feel like sometimes I think we both get too close, because it's just like, it has an emotional impact on you, and it really can be difficult at times, like on your mental health. And I'm sure all of you know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
There've been times when we felt physically uncomfortable in situations.
yeah, but we've knocked on some doors that were kind of yikes. But
A few threats, physical
we've
threats.
gotten some physical threats, but I don't think we've
God.
ever. I don't think
Oh
we've
my
ever.
goodness.
Yeah, but it's like people are trolls, and it's one of those things where I think for the most part, for me, a journalist or an attorney getting too close is when you totally get like invested in, like, it has to be this guy. And we've never really felt that way about the Delphi case. We've been kind of like, hey, Keegan Klein was looked at in February. We're hearing that people are interested in Tony Klein. In March, they were all over Ron Logan. What's up with that? So we kind of have a more academic view of like the people in it, because we're kind of like, here's what the cops think. Make of this what you will, basically. And we don't really feel. When Alan came up, I think a lot of people were like, oh no, that's not my suspect. I never heard of him. And we were kind of like, okay, let's learn about this guy now. I think that's the kind of attitude that you have to take.
Right.
So here's another one that I thought of, and I guess you're pinning from it. So we know from during the headline news interview with Keegan Klein, he brought up when his father was not speaking to him, and that his father's house was searched again, and it was 2 to 3 weeks prior. And we do not have the probable cause affidavit for that second search warrant. At least it's not been released, which I'd love to see that. But when we were doing our timeline, which we did a whole show breaking the timeline and filling everything in, one thing that kind of came together during that time frame was that right before this search happened, the second search on the Klein's home was right before it was going to be released. I believe it was Channel 8. The lady was from Channel 8. I don't want to misspeak, that you guys spoke to, who had found out about Keegan Klein and the Anthony shots and had told the police, hey, we're going to go out there and we're going to tell everybody, about this. What are your thoughts? And that's why we got that middle of the night. Hey, we're, Anthony shots, all this kind of stuff. Do
Yeah.
you think that that search warrant had something to do with hit Tony Klein's house before it gets out that we don't have, not only that they had Keegan Klein in jail, but they had Keegan Klein in jail with a possible connection to Delphi?
Yeah, that's a great question. We don't really know all of the inner workings. And that journalist, that I believe is Demi Johnson.
She did some wonderful work.
She's
on this
an incredible reporter. She was for Channel 8 for Wish TV, and
went to Florida, left us and went to Florida.
Went to Florida, but she's awesome. Like I think she did a really terrific job with this. We interviewed her on the show because of you never want to, if you're a journalist, you don't want to ask a journalist too much about their sources or what exactly happened, because it's that we don't want her to ask us about our sources. Yeah. So we didn't really grill her on that element, or what exactly the time frame was on that, or hey, did you have this? And then they put out that weird video at 9 p.m. or whatever.
I think she did indicate she had the name Keegan Klein before.
I think she did indicate in the interview that she had it before all that happened.
Right.
But we don't know what the mechanisms were or anything like that. So we can't really speculate on that. And then with the searching Tony Klein's house, we don't know that much about that. We don't even if he let them in voluntarily, there would not have had to have been a probable cause affidavit. Based on what we know about him and his experiences with the police at that point, we sort of think it's unlikely that he would have let them in, but we don't have enough information on that to know. And it's kind of it's there's so many things like that where it's if we had more details, it would kind of tell us something about the case, but it's still very murky.
No, if I want to mention another reporter, if I remember correctly, that search was further confirmed by Russ McQuaid of 59 News, and he indicated I think they took the dog, at least temporarily.
Yeah, and he talked to neighbors who had witnessed some of this. So I think that something certainly happened, and that's the indication. But whether they found anything relevant or what exactly the mechanisms were, we don't know.
There's another question in here too.
Yeah, I saw that. That was the.
Go ahead.
But what happened with Tony? Do we still expect an arrest?
I don't know if we ever necessarily expected or were counting down an arrest for Tony. We certainly were very interested in him because it seemed like the police were certainly at the time. I mean, they were at the time, but we don't really know where that stands now, or if we're going to expect to see, okay, maybe, if there's a link with Anthony shots, does that definitely tie in Tony, or could that tie in somebody else who had access? We don't know. If it goes from a situation where the police felt that Keegan was involved in the luring possibly, or in the Anthony shots angle, and they felt there must have been another guy who actually did the killing for whatever reason, maybe Tony's a good target in that situation when you don't have Alan's name, but maybe Alan becomes a more favorable suspect once you have that, and maybe you slot him into Tony's place, or maybe Tony is a person who can connect the two. But we don't know yet. It's a situation where we I don't know if we expect more arrests at this point without having further information, because it's if there was very strong evidence against other people that they had right now, those people would be under arrest.
Right. It's like a spider web. We're trying to connect the spider web, and the police are definitely trying to find. That's why it's still open. I want to remind everybody too. It is still open. Tips are still open. All of that is still available.
Yeah.
So I guess two things made me think of. Kevin, why would a probable cause still be shielded for a second search warrant? If we see the first search warrant and we got all the detail from the CSAM, why would a second search warrant on the Kleins be sealed?
In terms of the Klein warrant that we have, that was actually not the probable cause affidavit for the search. It was a probable cause affidavit for the charges that were filed against him.
Based on the findings. Okay.
And so if there were hypothetically further charges against the Kleins or someone else related to Delphi or something else, we certainly would see that that probable cause affidavit. If there's a search warrant and it doesn't lead anywhere, sometimes they don't release that. They can claim it's an investigative record, and when there's investigative records, that means they don't have to release it to the public. They never officially released their own Logan warrant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one scares me because it makes you nervous, because I know the defense team wants that because they want to know if they had a right to get everything that they took. And if you lose that, then you lose all evidence they got at that time, correct?
Exactly.
That's very true.
And to make clear, we don't have these warrants, but the defense certainly does have them.
Yeah.
And so if there's weaknesses in them, I'm confident the defense will do everything they can to try to exploit those weaknesses.
Yeah, I think some people have gotten mad at us at times where they're like, you guys are reporting on the Kleins, you're reporting on Logan. That's giving the defense ammo. And it's like the defense actually will get all of that and more, because I'm sure there's other people that we don't even know about who they were looking at one point. And, the thing about that is that you don't really want a case where the prosecution gets blinders on and just looks at Alan the whole time, because then they might be ignoring other people. So I feel like the defense can do whatever they want. They can kind of make a big deal about them getting blinders on. They can make a big deal about other suspects coming up. But the strength of the case, will have to just carry that. It's not a situation where the media should be doing things one way or another, not reporting on alternative suspects because it hurts the defendant case, because it really just doesn't.
Okay. Another question: if police are saying that they thought it was two voices speaking to as Anthony Schatz, right? They thought it wasn't just one, possibly two. And Anthony Schatz is participating in the CSAM. Can they not arrest Tony Klein and Keegan Klein for both of those, because they both, I guess that's a hard case to prove, right? Because they're using the same Wi-Fi, they're using the same Anthony Schatz login, they're using the same devices that are owned technically by Keegan, because he's trying to set everything up. Does that make it that there's no way for them to prove it is Tony Klein?
I don't know. That's a really great question, actually. I don't know if there's no way to prove that the other person would be Tony Klein. I think Detective Vito and Deputy Clinton in the transcripts made a pretty interesting case about, like, it had to be someone in the household. We don't think your friend was breaking in when you were passed out and stealing your phone and doing sexual things. But at the same time, that's very circumstantial, and it doesn't place it in anybody's hands except maybe Keegan. And if Keegan's not willing to elucidate about what's going on or who the other person was, then it might be pretty difficult to get a conviction on that.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's a situation where, like, you can kind of fill in the blanks yourself, and, like, common sense tells you, well, this is very interesting, especially given Tony Klein's criminal history. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily give anybody an opening to actually adjudicate that. And I'll add to that, like, some people have been like, well, you guys thought it was Tony Klein for a while, so you were wrong. We were always interested in, like, what the police thought, and the police were very much looking into the Klein angle and all of the facets there for a long time. So that became interesting to us. And then certainly learning about how Tony Klein had a history of doing peeping Tom stuff, voyeurism, violence towards his own family. That's all true. So when people sort of say, like, oh, do you regret putting that out there? No, because we think that you can be doing some pretty horrible sexual crimes and, not be a murderer, but that, our platform being a place where victims can come and speak about that, I think is very important to us. And I think for the people of Peru, I mean, this is an open secret. You talk to people up there and it's like, yeah, this has been going on for years. So if it gives, even if he turns out not to be directly involved in the murders, if this gives any sort of warning to men who are going around and trying to prey upon children and prey upon women in their communities, maybe they think twice about it because maybe it gets out.
You would hope so.
Absolutely.
My God, there's so much of it. It's so prevalent. It's scary. It's so scary. So probably the last question here. I don't want to keep you longer than you guys are promised to give me, which you've already gone over, and I appreciate that. So could Alan be a one person only and not connected to the Kleins?
Oh yeah, I mean that's
Absolutely.
You always have to take that as a possibility, and that's the boring answer, right? No one wants the boring answer. The boring answer is it's not a conspiracy, and it's one guy who just did something horrible. We tend to really be wanting. We tend to want to know more about like how do they tie up the Anthony Shots angle. Either way, do they tie it up saying actually there's no evidence, so we can't go forward? Do they tie it up saying there is evidence and it's linked in this way? Anthony Shots could be linked in a way that's also not like literally a murder conspiracy. It could be some sort of casual passing of information that leads to the murders, but wasn't necessarily, I mean, there's like a lot of different answers in between there. But I think we all have to say if there's no evidence, you can't just have a trial based on like, we feel like this is too big to be a coincidence, obviously. So I think that's where we stand. We're highly interested. We want them to kind of explain some of this, but we also aren't convinced that there's necessarily going to be enough evidence to take it to court. And also, that could mean that there were people involved. You just can't prove it. But there's also a possibility that it was just a bizarre coincidence. So, I mean, that's hard to believe, but I think it is a possibility.
Yeah. Sure. Well, I want to one, thank you guys for being here. I feel so blessed. I know we all feel so blessed that you're here.
Thank you so much.
I want to really encourage anybody, if you've not listened to the Murder Sheet podcast, to please do so. Also, if you're watching this even on replay, we want to remind you, if you have any information, maybe the Kleins knew the Allens, or maybe something about in there, don't be afraid to speak out. Don't be afraid to speak out. Call the police, notify the police, tell them, there's that case is still open. Then after that, you can call the Murder Sheet and you can tell them what's going on. You can stay anonymous. They protect their sources and they stay anonymous. And they don't just do the Delphi case. I know I have some of us that have been listening to the JFK assassination show.
Yes.
They've been covering Idaho murders. Of course, the Burger Chef, which is a big Indiana case. I know you guys here from Indiana are big into that, and we've talked about that before. Maybe we can convince them one day to come back and talk. We'll talk about a whole nother case that's going on. And also they do have Patreon supporter. And if you do Patreon supporter, you get some private one-on-one time with them and, a few of their other Patreon supporters. So we love them. They're great people. They have great integrity. They're honest. We've used them for a lot of our resources, and we are very blessed that they came on here with us today. We're going to stay on with you guys for a little bit, but we're going to let the Murder Sheet be able to leave and do what things they want to today.
We just want to say, Paige, Mama Bear, and JSD, you guys are delightful. You ask great questions.
We really
love that, and we appreciate the research you guys put into your channel. So I just want to commend you for the work that you've done and just say thank you so much. And thanks to your audience for tuning in and asking great questions. We really enjoyed this, and we just appreciate you all. And thank you so much for having us on.
All right, we're going to watch the Murder Sheet.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Coming up Tuesday. Coming up tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye,
guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Oh, where'd Paige go?
There she goes.
Oh,
sorry.
Did you remove me?
No, I accidentally. I was clicking on them. Aren't they wonderful?
Okay.
They're so nice.
Oh my goodness. Thank you.
They're the nicest people
Wonderful.
ever.
Yeah, they very much are. I think we got a lot of our questions answered that we wanted, at least for the shows and things like that were going on.
Yes.
Wow.
So yeah,
we got to hear it from the best.
Yeah,
their opinions, which is what we wanted. That's amazing.
Well, CJ or KA, you're welcome to come up if you'd like to kind of talk about that at all. I think we try to be kind to kind of go through the timeline and ask the questions. And then I was trying to watch the timeline board over to the left and then my question sheet over to the right and trying to make sure they fell into line. But yeah, they're really great. And I think they were, truly honest about everything that, they get. Oh, and one thing I was going to bring up just for them to tell you, but I'll tell you, they really do cover where, there's some information that they know that they don't reveal out because they think it would hurt the case. They've had that happen several times of things that they had some previous knowledge for. And then, they also do make sure that they confirm something before they say something. So,
and that's why they're so great. Like,
absolutely.
Exactly.
They just, like I said, everything they say is so valuable because the way they tell us what's going on, it's just so respectful and professional.
Yeah. Yeah. But isn't their story so sweet? I told you the heart-to-heart story.
Oh, yes.
They came together and she messaged him and he messaged her back. And
those of us who are old enough to know who heart-to-heart are, of course.
So not me.
I do.
not trying to reveal our age or whatever, but
never try to do that.
I mean, if you like true crime and old shows, that the Heart to Heart was, they investigated shows and were into true crime and every episode was on it. And so, I think they really helped with kind of, clarifying some of the things that we've heard on their shows. So, and my big thing, I mean, I know it can be a coincidence, but, it's just hard to say that they're searching the river for something Keegan Klein says and to say it's Delphi related as far as what the police said and then not think it's case related. You know what I'm saying? What would they be looking for in the river that Keegan Klein would tell them?
Please.
And then Richard Allen coming into the picture shortly after.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, SRB.
I didn't want to put
Phantom.
him on the spot asking him about Tony, but I did want to just ask him a little bit,
Oh yeah.
Putting him in a bag.
No. I'm glad you went there because we did, I know there's a lot of
covered
people
him
that think
and
he's that extra
there's a good
person,
reason.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've all talked about it, as we do in our group. Of course, Keld is part of that too. God love her. She's helping us below right now.
Oh, there's he is.
He's the best mod. Hi, Kat.
Hello.
Hi,
CJ.
Hi, CJ.
There's his coffee.
Oh, he's on mute.
You're muted.
Unmute
CJ.
yourself.
I'm sorry about that.
We see your coffee mug, dear.
Oh, where's that? Oh,
No,
there.
your sign.
Oh, his sign.
Oh, my sign.
sign.
Yeah.
Your sign, CJ.
Yeah, I fixed it. So I didn't even think about this, about the conservation officer maybe being friends with
Yeah,
RA.
that was my question to them before, and I thought I would bring it up here too.
So
Interesting.
do you guys think they were like buddy, and that's why he went to him?
I mean,
Well, it's
possible.
odd to meet in front of a grocery store, right?
Yeah. I didn't even know it was in front of a grocery store.
Yeah, let's meet at the grocery store.
Yeah, right. But if I did that, I'd be like,
That's
hey,
not weird.
Paige, I'm on my way to the grocery store. I got to pick up some bananas. You want to just
By the way,
meet
I
me
need
up
to
in
tell
front of
you
there?
that I was at the scene of a murder.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
casually bring
A
that
couple
up.
people saw me. They could, say what I look like. What the heck?
I
No
happen
big
to be
deal.
there. I know they
So-
just brought up about finding a guy on the bridge, but I thought I'd talk to you here in front of the, Kroger.
So what do you think happened then? Like, okay, so the FBI first they said it was the FBI clerical error. Then the FBI, didn't they say that it was the local LE?
They said it
Clerical
was,
error?
they just made sure that they said it was not us. Isn't that
Okay.
interesting?
So they just said it wasn't us. But it sounded like it was. right?
Yeah.
Or was I misunderstanding it? To me, it sounded like it was the FBI's clerical error.
I just think it's funny that that's what they come out and worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Let's see. What did you think of them, CJ? Weren't they fantastic?
Oh man, they were so polite.
Thank you, Kel.
It was beautiful. Yeah, like
Thank
you
you,
know,
Grant.
you listen to their podcasts and they sound like a very, just their intro about how they got together and stuff. Whenever you listen to their podcasts, and you're like, wow,
Love to you, Phantom.
they're really sweet, polite, thoughtful, with a lot of integrity. And then when you actually
Yeah.
get to see them, unfiltered in a way, it even shows it even more. It glorifies their beauty even more. Just seeing them, just live. It was really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're great people, and I wanted people to kind of get to know them. We didn't go deep into that. I was trying to really cut it short because I know they had something else going on later today. So I was trying to keep it within an hour, which is so hard because I was like, man, guys, when we talk Delphi, we go 3 hours. I mean, we're not like a
Exactly.
1
We could
hour
talk to them forever.
discussion, but
It's
Right.
like, do you have a whole day that we can book you?
yeah, no kidding. Can we just spend the afternoon
Book an
with
appointment.
you? Yeah.
They're a little busy.
Yes, yes. But I did tell him, I said, I know that, some other shows have provide them, dinner and stuff like that. So I told him, I said, I'll take you out to dinner. I'll take you out to dinner. But
Bob
So-
Evans.
True Crime Maria says she's still open to the Klein involvement. Absolutely, Maria. I'm there too.
We are too. TCF.
I've felt that since the beginning. Just
Yeah.
with all the weird stuff
yeah.
going on.
I just don't believe in coincidences in true
Me
crime,
Yeah.
really, and there's too many.
Right.
Too many in this case.
I mean, I
Way
think
too
it's
many.
odd that if somebody's catfishing you to meet you as a kid, right? They're playing as a teenager. Trying to meet you. They're an adult. And it just so happens that same day, somebody shows up and actually murders the girls. I'm sorry. Yeah. Angel Bear, I didn't either, but there's a lot still stuck on him. There's a lot on Keegan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Kelt's at work. Sorry, Kelt. Sorry, it's at work. Could be I have thought it again. Guy would be like, oh, well, he is not like that.
Mm-hmm.
True, right. If he knew him, Angel, he could have been like, oh, it's just Richard Allen. I know him. There's no way he would be part of it. He's just letting me know. But when we went back to the timeline to see it, the timeline itself, and again, if you haven't watched our show about the timeline, it's called Puzzle Pieces Put Together. We include every single probable cause affidavit, news story, everything that's in there, and when it happened. And when you go back to it, the one thing that we found interesting is right before this all happened, that's when they released a freezed picture of Bridge Guy by the police. And that's when the police said they want to find out who this person is, right? They want to know, who's the guy in this picture who may have seen the girls. And then within a couple of days, he's calling this guy saying, we need to meet. I was there. I mean, I find it suspicious you didn't call the police directly instead of,
Yeah.
calling the conservation officer.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a bunch of baloney myself, but I mean, we talk, amongst ourselves. We have discussions. They're talking in legal terms and so forth, which that's why we have them here to, to help us on that level. But we just have discussions, in our opinions, type thing. So, but yeah, I think we are all on board with the fact that we think the clients have more to do with this than,
That's a good point, Kel. How else did RA know to call this guy?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Think about it. If you're going to tell somebody, the police told you who to call. right? They gave us a phone line to call.
Yeah, there's
if you know who
flyers
the guy
everywhere.
is,
You
right?
know?
So he doesn't call him. Well, how does he know to find the conservation officer phone number? That's a good point. Very good
Yeah.
point.
Did you
So-
guys
go ahead?
Did you guys happen to listen to the Murder Sheets podcast about the coworker of RA?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yes, yes.
So
We're
if he
religious.
was working at the CVS in Peru before he was working at the CVS in Delphi,
Mhm.
Peru and Mexico were kind of, right next to each other. Angel
Yeah.
Bear, I agree with you. I've always felt RA looked like the guy on the bridge, and I always thought TK was the other sketch. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And
I
what's
want to
up,
say
Grizz?
something about the sketches, that the Becky Patty even said herself, which I really found interesting. I never looked at it that way.
Go ahead.
The sketches kind of depend on who saw the person, whether it was a young teenager that saw the man or it was an older person that saw the man. That's
Right.
how you're going to describe them. When you're a young person, you're going to say they looked old, they look like this. But when you're actually an adult, you see people, more clearly of age.
Right.
Yeah.
So I
That's
thought that was
true.
interesting to point out about the sketches as well.
Right.
Sure.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Absolutely.
It
So it
seems
could be
strange to be the one to
anyone.
bring it up, in my opinion, like he was telling on himself almost. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Or just getting it out there so that way, somebody didn't come back and say, "Hey, weren't you?" It's just kind of one of them things like, yeah, I was there, just to kind of, because like they were saying and like everybody else is saying that he was spotted, so he probably knew what the hell he was doing with the conservation officer. When people saw you, you want to let people know that you saw you, but you don't want to tell somebody that can really start asking you some questions or bring you in or anything. And I thought Angel Bear brought up a great point too. Why didn't the conservation officer contact right there? Yep. The conservation officer. Why didn't they come forward?
Agreed.
Well, they turned in the paper, obviously,
Yeah,
right? Something got turned in, but there wasn't like whoever this conservation officer wasn't like, hey,
you need to take a look
go back,
at this now.
go back. But he did turn in it to somebody because obviously somebody lost it in filing, right? Either the FBI, who said no, it wasn't them, or maybe local authorities. But somebody screwed that up. You know what I'm saying?
Night Paige. She had to go.
Yeah, good night, Paige. We'll talk to you later.
Love you, hon. Yeah. They should have, I think, pushed more, like Angel Bear said, to say, you need to look at this person. This is some serious, stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that for me is, to be honest with you, that was one of the points that for me was one of the most frustrating damn things I've heard about this case when it came out, that they had this information that damn early.
Yeah. And then a clerical error is what made him basically not even be questioned for so long. Imagine if they could have, interviewed him and Ronald Logan together. If they would have been able to before RL passed.
I think it would have been good. Now, I at my point, I don't think Ron Logan had anything to do with it, just because I feel like he would have been arrested when they first searched his house the first 3 times, right? Once on the property, twice in the home. But he could have answered a lot of questions like, does Richard Allen come here a lot?
Right.
Is he around here a lot? Does he normally look at fish at 80 feet freaking in the air? Right?
Have you ever seen him before? Have you ever?
Yeah.
Not that I was trying to put RL involved in anything, because I don't feel that way either. I'm just saying, if they would have had the information not get lost, then maybe they could have actually got a little further in this whole investigation and you know, the earlier that you can investigate things, the better it's going to be when it comes to evidence and such, because after time, stuff starts to go away, people's memories fade,
Right.
you know,
Absolutely.
Well, that's why
Absolutely.
they
just
start
the
cases
timing of
from
it.
scratch again. You know, they'll
Absolutely.
say we need to take fresh eyes on this, take a look, you know, with fresh eyes on this case. And
I mean, we're
that's
not even detectives, and that's how we did it, right? We went back and
absolutely.
we put this whole line back together.
I
And
think
then
it's
when we
sitting in
did
my
it, we're like,
hands.
holy crap, some of this makes more sense, right? Now that you plug in certain things that happen at certain times, we're like, wait a minute. That's why I asked them the question about the second search warrant on the Kleins. It happened. We knew to narrow it down because when Keegan Klein said it happened on the Headlines News interview, and then we go backwards and look at, wait a minute, that was right before that the news announced that they had the information, which was the day after, because they already told the police,
Mm-hmm.
we know Keegan Klein is in jail and we know he's the Anthony Shots profile. So that's why late that night, you got an Indiana State Police thing saying, we want to talk to anybody who's communicated on social media with an Anthony Shots profile. Then everybody was shocked why the very next day they said, oh, by the way, that's Keegan Klein and we already have his butt in jail, right? It's like,
Yeah.
Right.
No kidding. The car at the CPS building, Angel Bear says, yeah, no.
right. He's parked there.
Yep.
We know he's parked there. And I think the other vehicles, I mean, you know, it's interesting because, you know, I think for me, I don't see Keegan Klein putting himself even waiting for somebody. Why would you even say that?
No.
And remember, he said it after he's taken to Grissom Air Force Base, and
Yep.
then they are searching the water. So obviously they're searching the water because they think he's telling the truth about something, or they
Mhm.
wouldn't be there for 5.5 weeks.
Right.
I think they're holding stuff back. I just don't think we know everything that's going on
Yeah.
right now. They
Oh,
have
not
to
at
keep
all.
things, you know, some things tight to the vest, you know.
Yeah. And we don't, and none of us want to know anything that we don't need to know now, right? We don't want to mess up the case. Nobody wants to mess up the
No.
case. And
I want justice for Abby and Libby.
Absolutely.
That's my goal.
Absolutely.
Those two
Mhm.
girls deserve justice.
Absolutely.
And
Wonder what they might have found in RA's phone, other devices back then, and who knows if they even still had them at the point in time. You know what? Here's the bad thing, True Crime Maria. He had 5 years to hide his crap.
Yep.
exactly.
He had 5 years. He's like, oh crap, they got me on tape. Now I can hide all this crap before they find it. However, that's why I asked Kevin about that search warrant, because it's like, okay, if they really defense believed that the search warrant wasn't valid, we would hear them fighting that, right? But we don't want them to get rid of stuff that they take. And in my opinion, the one thing I know for certain, he didn't buy new. He could have bought a new jacket. He could have bought a new shirt. He could have bought whatever that looks exactly the same. But what did he still have? The car. And if he got in his car after committing that murder, which he's walking to, right, muddy and bloody, if he got in that car, that DNA is still going to be in that vehicle. And that is not going to be able to be explained.
Excuse me.
Absolutely.
Well, and you made a good point. He had a comfy 5 years to get rid of stuff because they weren't even looking at him. So it was totally comfy 5 years. And Grizz, maybe that's how he didn't even need to scrub his devices because he had 5 years, comfy 5 years to get rid of that kind of stuff. To be able to do that.
Absolutely.
You know,
Whereas,
he
I mean,
probably felt I'm getting away with this scot-free because nobody
Well,
came and talked to him, and he could do. Nobody was
Right.
watching him. He could do
well,
whatever he wanted.
TK's in the same position too. CJ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
Angel
even
Bell,
longer.
you're right. And that person, the witness, had spoke to the police as well. And that purple PT Cruiser they had connected to, at least owned by Tony Klein's mother. right?
Yeah.
It wasn't owned by Tony
Mhm.
Klein
Right.
or Keegan, but they did have access to that type of vehicle.
And that's a
So, I
very
mean,
specific car
it
and a
is.
very specific color. I
It
mean,
is.
too
And Angel
specific.
Bear, the point about your witness too, remember that witness also talked about that there was vehicles parked very early in the morning. Remember that? The car was
Mhm.
there very early in the morning. So was
Mhm.
that somebody kind of checking out the site, right? They were looking at it. Maybe that person hadn't been there. I mean, when they talk about that Keegan Klein had to look up that gas station in Delphi, well, why would he have to? He's looking it up for a reason. So that coincides with me as far as that he waited for somebody. Now, could have he waited in there during the murder? I guess so, but he also would cover his butt in case he was there, like he did actually get out of the car. But if he is Googling where this gas station is in Delphi, he did it for a reason. Was he
Mhm.
meeting somebody or was he taking somebody there?
Now, of course, too, we're just speculating here. A lot of this is in our opinion,
Speculation.
things that we discuss, and in our opinion, we're not law enforcement officers and we're not directly involved in the case. Research, yes, but
You're right,
you know,
Grizz.
but
Yep.
yeah, yes, very true, Grizz. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing we got to remember too is if Richard Allen is connected in any way to Keegan Klein and it's dealing with this CSAM materials, he's not using Richard Allen as his username, right? Keegan Klein was using Anthony Shots. He's not using Richard Allen. He's going to have something alternative from that. But yeah, he had plenty of time to scrub his devices.
Oh, absolutely.
Comfy.
I'm sure he was surprised when somebody finally showed up.
Right? Yeah. After 5 years.
Like, what are you doing here?
After 5 years. Oh, what? Me? Huh?
And then to be in the car in the same blue jacket that he had
Mhm.
on how many years prior to, like,
Mhm.
are you kidding me?
Yeah. That's why I think he could have replaced the jacket, but he did not replace the car.
Mm-mm.
Right?
No,
Because
and
he'd
then
be
his,
like, oh
and his
man,
wife says, "Oh,
you
he
didn't
still
find
has
blood
the
on the
jacket."
jacket. You're not gonna I mean, first of all, what an idiot. He shows up wearing normal stuff that he wore all the time, that his wife and his family and his friends saw
Yep.
him in. I mean, that's why it's like, man, nobody noticed the clothes.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I'm
Especially
sorry.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm sorry. At least have a discussion with your significant other and say, boy, that looks a lot like you, and boy, you have those same jeans and that same jacket. I think maybe you should go at least into the police, speak to them about it or something.
Yeah, but with her
Oh.
like I could see her like totally thinking shit, he could do this to me. Or
Oh yeah.
just because she goes and says something to the cops, now they're not obviously going to arrest him that night, so he would have to come back home. So then she would be faced with the fact that, he's going to be coming back home going, "What the hell did you say to the cops?" That might even I could see I could see her being in a position where if she knew, she just had to keep quiet until she knew Ellie would catch him, and she probably felt like I don't know, like
I understand, but
walking
there's
on
a
glass or something.
little strangeness here, and I'm sorry we talked about this earlier, JSD, but I got to say this. The fact that his daughter, they took a picture of his daughter for her graduation
Oh
at the
gosh,
same
yeah.
exact spot,
Oh.
where they took the picture
Mhm.
of RA, and the fact, and I cannot, I'm
So
sorry, I
creepy.
cannot overlook this, how similar
Mhm.
their daughter looks to
Mhm.
Libby. I can't not see that. It just
Yeah, it's creepy. And then you
very,
could see the whole rail, the train track going all the way back. So he could literally walk up and wherever, say the picture's up in his living room behind the couch, he could literally walk up to the couch and look at the picture and just revisit the thought of him walking down
No, but he had
those
the
train
wanted
tracks.
picture in their
You know,
house. They
like
had a
it's just
picture of
yeah,
the
yeah,
wanted picture in his
right,
home.
I
right.
know. It's just, hey,
Yeah,
Craig.
he
It's
just gloated
disgusting.
about it. He was gloating,
You're right, Angel. I remember that too, Angel Bear, that they talked about a friend then saw that same vehicle over at 3 p.m. on the other side. Kind of like picking up somebody, you know?
It's just,
Always wondered why RA went through with the murder when he knew those other girls. Exactly.
I know.
Exactly.
Weren't they
Exactly.
supposed to meet the day before? And something happened where she didn't show up? I thought I heard that before, where they were supposed
No,
to meet the day before.
the Anthony Schatz stated that he was supposed to meet her that day and that she didn't show up that day.
Oh, I thought for some reason the girls. Okay, maybe that's where I got it confused.
Yeah.
Sick.
And they
Like
had
his
talked
wife.
to the Anthony Schatz profile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hope you're doing
The
well.
night before.
I saw some of your updated shows.
Yeah. The update that just came through, like what, yesterday it was? I think?
Yeah, he did one with comparing the voices and stuff.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was a good one. It's really good. He does really good videos. He's good at that stuff.
Yes, he is. But yeah,
Like his
This
wife
was-
wore the pants.
yeah,
You never know. If
Good.
mom ain't
Possible
happy,
good.
ain't nobody happy.
Yep. Well, I mean, right now I just feel like I can't get rid of the I can't get rid of the thing. He was very quiet. I know a lot of people talked about that. But isn't that a normal thing?
I think a lot of people put
Antisocial,
on a front, you know.
Yeah.
His description is all the same out there. He
Well,
does,
you want to
Angel Bear.
blend in. If you're not a good person, you want to blend in, you know.
Right.
That's my feeling,
Right.
but
Mhm.
that's in my opinion.
Well, remember his good friends that talked about it, the ones who owned the bar, sat there. They were shocked, right? A lot of people were shocked, but they were
Yes.
really shocked. And they talked about that they did talk about the murders together,
Mhm.
and that how they knew they knew the family.
Yeah.
So,
The bartender's the best source.
well, hell yeah.
Everybody talks to the bartender.
Which is not the smartest thing to do, CJ.
Well, I mean, hell, I said that could have been the connection right there, right? You've got, Keegan said Tony had a problem with drinking, right? and Richard Allen liked to drink, so hell, that could be as simple as them meeting there. That's how it happens in a small town. You
Hey.
go drink, and you can meet a lot of people.
Maybe they were drinking buddies in Peru and Mexico.
Yeah, they're not far. They're not
No.
far.
Not at all. I would like to find a nice close connection, though. I really would. That I would like.
It's just
Yeah,
too
so-
close.
When you think about Keegan, I mean, we're talking that Keegan Klein, returned home on that Saturday, February 25th. Boom, there's the execution warrant, right? There's the execution search warrant done right there to find
Mhm.
the cyber crimes that they knew from Anthony Schatz. That was when that happened.
Right. I don't know.
And then that was a screw up too. I mean, that wasn't part of what with the murder sheet, but damn, they left with certain devices and they didn't leave with the dang device that was current at the time.
The most important one. He was trying to nuke it. Are you kidding?
Go figure.
TK was trying to nuke it.
They completely wiped it. I mean, what's the only forensics they had was what timings he was deleting everything at that particular time. And they
I
tried
was
to
kidding
recapture
about the
stuff
nuking,
from
by the
it.
way. Just so we know, I don't want to get sued.
Come back and go, oh, well, I mean, and you know what? I need to go back and look at that, the charges, because that charge should, I hope, stayed, because that was for him to try to stop stop the police from finding out information.
Yeah. I mean, whatever.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and I just found this. Sorry. Here, I'll turn it in.
Who's
Like,
the
yeah,
other
right.
users of AS account?
Well, yeah, I mean,
his cousin who lived next door, right? Is that proven, or is it just that he was using the internet?
No, his
Just-
cousin. They had that guy who lived next door. The guy who went and moved to Vegas with him.
Okay.
He wasn't a cousin, but his cousin was at the address that they were looking
Right.
for them. That's where they pinged a
Right.
phone
Right.
after the murders. That they said, "Oh, well, I was over at Grandma and Grandpa's." No, you weren't. You were at your cousin's house on the other address. We already know that.
I don't honestly think, Grizz, that we know exactly how many people used the AS account, especially if they were just using Keegan's phone, let's just say hypothetically, and, you know, let's just say hypothetically Tony was on it, and the friend that they moved to Vegas with, and God knows who else, you know, I'm just being speculative, of course, but God knows how many people were truly, you know.
Oh yeah,
using
if it is connected to
Now, if you're talking in
CSAM,
general, I don't
the
know how
CSAM,
many people.
it could be endless who he gave it to. But he at least admitted his dad, right at the beginning, he finally admitted that his dad had access to it. And then, but he could have given it to somebody else, but he definitely could be sharing images with somebody, period.
Mhm.
And they have busted tons of people in Indiana for that.
Yep. Soon after that, they busted like 20-some people in southern Indianapolis.
Well, I just found two more. I'm
It
going to
was
have to
right
do a
after.
show. Evil City. I
Yes.
just found another operation that just got busted, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm going to got to work on that one. Got to work on that
Is
one.
it in Kokomo again?
Not in Kokomo. Good God.
Sorry.
Here's what's
Yeah.
funny.
Kokomo is like the
Mama
hotspot.
Bear's not even from Indiana, and she's like, "Is it in Kokomo?" Because those people. No, we love Kokomo. Not all of Kokomo is messed
Yes.
up.
Hey guys, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love Indiana.
I
Love
know
it.
that's what's horrible. Nobody's gonna come here anymore.
I know, right?
Yeah, but there's just a bunch of messed up people in Indiana.
Yeah, it was only a couple
Obstruction of
days after
justice.
RA was arrested that one in southern Indianapolis got busted. It was like right after.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's another
Right
group
after.
of people handling that. I mean, when they talk about Keegan Klein being taken to Grissom Air Force Base, I just feel like,
I think there's
they got
multiple
multiple
states.
cases going on.
Yeah, I think there's multiple states and multiple people exchanging information. That's why they're being so hush-hush about a lot of stuff, because what they may have for this case is affecting some other case that's in Chicago. Because before they even started messing with KK, if I'm not mistaken, they were in Chicago first, right? Isn't it the Chicago
Well,
LE
it's the
that
Chicago.
started the
It's
whole?
the Chicago FBI.
Okay,
But
FBI.
they specialize. The lady who did the search warrant on Keegan Klein's home and filed the probable cause affidavit on Ron Logan's specializes in CSAM and sex trafficking. Child
Yeah,
sex
that's right.
trafficking.
That's right. Because they were investigating Keegan Klein before Delphi even took place.
I believe that they could have been, but I think what led it to him was that the girl who had the masked man come outside her house.
Right.
Yeah.
Once that report
Yeah.
happened, that's what happened. But
Yeah.
remember you got to read the probable cause affidavits, because they talk about it was a tip that came in from that but it directly said in Anthony Schott's profile, and that's what got them out there.
Right.
Ever send LG money?
Like communicating with.
LGO.
Yes.
That's what I
Was
thought.
it that morning or was it the night before?
It
was
was
morning.
both.
Okay, it was that
Both.
Yeah, I
That's
thought it
right.
was the morning.
It was both times. That's right. I could look at my timeline. It's sitting right here in front of me.
I mean, that's true, Kel. The other point is that the people who do this, they are all over the place. I mean, the CSAM stuff is all over the place. And I just to share, I just feel like there is somewhat of a connection, whether that's what Richard Allen used to get there and to meet her and to have that. I mean, for me, when they talk about another person there, though, I mean, it makes me think. You've got Richard Allen shows up with a gun, right? Rich guy, we know. We hear the click. We hear Abby saying gun, right? She says gun and stuff in there, and he takes them down. Does he also then by himself pull out a knife and then cut the girls? I just feel like that's another person that's there. I feel like that's why the murder charges for him are like, it's because they can prove he was abducting the kids, right? They were
Right.
here. We have a video of you taking them from there with the gun.
Yep.
Made them go someplace they didn't want to go.
Yep.
So that's not hard to prove kidnapping. We got kidnapping. That's easy. But the girls ended up murdered, right? And we always give this example to everybody. It's like the bank robbery, and you're the go-away driver, right? Getaway driver, right? And you're going to drive it. It doesn't matter that you didn't shoot an officer in the bank. You still are going to face that charge because you're part of it. So if he was meeting with somebody else there, I'm just trying to figure out how a grown man with Libby and Abby. Now, Abby was small, but not Libby. She was bigger than Abby. How? Because I know people want to say they didn't fight, but when you know somebody's fixing to kill you or to do something to you, you're fighting.
Right.
You're fighting for your life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how one man would have kept them under
Right.
control,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I
Same
agree
here.
with you.
Same
In my
opinion.
Yep.
Same opinion.
Absolutely. I think it was again, we've discussed this. In my opinion, I think it was kind of, again, I think the CCM all had something to do with this, again, in my opinion. And I think it was almost like RA had to prove something to TK to move up the line of status, if you want to say. But again, that's in my opinion. It's just a feeling that I have.
And
Well,
I can't let go either that I don't think that Keegan Klein is going to wait for another 50-something-year-old man to go down there and meet with girls. I don't think somebody's going to convince him of doing that except his own father, in my
Right.
opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think that's the only person he would have done that for.
Agreed.
So,
Hi, Cherry.
What's up, Cherry Tree?
hi.
Yeah, I feel like they knew they were both into the same sick, twisted interest, and that was enough reason for each one of them not to tell on the other one, with
Yeah.
both of
Exactly.
them being there. You know, they had so much dirt on each other. There's no way. It's like, hey, you got dirt on me, I got dirt on you. We're buddies already. We're just gonna chalk this one up and hope each one of us get away.
I agree.
I'm just wondering why, in my opinion, RA is the bridge guy. Why do you think he's so confident on being not guilty of the crime?
I don't think he is.
You don't think
I
so?
don't
I don't think he is, honestly.
No?
I think he's acting like he is, but
I
It's the
think
way
it's
his
just his
lawyers came
defense
out.
attorneys. I don't think he is. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
if he was sitting here and it was not attorneys that were really going to push back as much as they did, I really feel like as he sits in jail, and if they would have already denied bail, like if we would have already had that and they already denied bail and he's going to be sitting there, and right now they are looking at all of the evidence, right? It's in discovery. They're trying to now look at everything. They're pushed back that their bail hearings now going to happen in June. They get that much more time for it to happen in June. And, they're looking at now everything that the police have at this point, and I feel like we could have had, in my opinion, my thoughts are that, we could have got where they would have went into him and gave him a plea deal and said, you know what, we'll take the death penalty off the table because we have that here. And you tell us the story. Who else was there?
give us the higher ups and we'll
Or just
let
charge
you
him with
live.
kidnapping and Like some
Yeah, I
kind of
mean, they
lesser
could
murder
lower it.
charge?
They'd
Like some
have
kind
to
of
lower
lesser
it.
murder
They'd
charge?
have to talk
Lesser
to the
murder
family
charge
about it.
Yeah, that they would have to agree
if
to
they
that.
get the help. Do you think TK's helping though? I've always wondered if TK is helping.
No,
No?
I
No,
think he's just
I
sitting
don't.
back thinking they have
I-
nothing on me.
Like where is this
Exactly.
dude at?
You're
Yeah.
right, Grizz. Better
just
look
weird.
turning.
That's it.
Yeah,
That is
whoever's
true.
yeah.
And
exactly.
unfortunately, that attorney did have, what was it, a triple homicide thrown out, like,
Yeah, because of
A
because
gun.
of
Murder
the
weapon.
warrant.
A-
Yeah.
Murder
a
weapon.
gun from a triple
Yeah.
homicide thrown
Yeah.
out. So,
Murder weapon. Yep.
yeah, I mean, anything's possible, Chris.
That's for sure.
I mean,
That's for sure.
Well,
It's-
and the other thing we got to remember too, I mean, part of the reason that some of this didn't escalate was because remember the FBI that was interviewed when the first Keegan Klein search warrant was happening, that FBI person came out and said, "Oh, this has nothing to do with Delphi." Remember, because the search was about Anthony Schatz and this other girl and somebody coming to her home. So they're searching to look for CSAM. They bust him. They get the stuff. Daddy says, I don't have Instagram and that, but my son does. They grab Keegan. They grab all of Keegan. They believe all of Keegan's device, except, I don't know, he forgets to grab his current one.
yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then,
Sorry,
and
guys.
then what do they wait? And if you're surprised, so was Keegan
Forgot.
Klein. Don't forget that it wasn't till 2020 till his butt got thrown in jail for the CSAM.
Yeah.
He was out for 3 dang years.
Yeah.
everybody
3
in
years.
this case has been out for a long
Traveling, going here, going there.
time.
Yeah.
Throwing stuff over the side of his car.
Yeah.
And, in my
Pictures
opinion,
everywhere.
of course,
Yeah, and it wasn't till they did not even assign the CSAM to an Indiana State Police Department. They didn't even assign that information until April of 2020. And that's when somebody finally looked at all of the information. Finally received the digital information. Didn't come to him till June of 2020. And then that's when they asked for them to make charges against him. That's how long it waited.
it's scary if you think about it.
Yeah. If you guys want to
And
see
with-
everything they found on his phones, we got video on that on the first
Oh,
search
yeah.
warrant. And we also cover the timeline, exactly when everything happened, when it got busted, what the case numbers were, all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Injustice. What you came up with the figures the other day because Grizz brought up a great point how they're gonna milk Delphi dry. What's the cost of it gonna be?
Over
you
$2 million.
mentioned it. Yeah,
Oh, easy.
yeah,
That's on the low side, they're saying. Yeah.
yeah. So Grizz brings up a great point too.
Yeah. And God knows how many times, don't forget appeals, everything else,
Mhm,
the
mhm.
hung jury has to try it all over again.
That little
it's-
community and the state probably too.
Yeah, they see.
How is that
yeah.
community gonna come up with that much?
Well, that crap's not right.
It's gonna come
They have
from the
3,000
state,
people in that whole community. How are
Right.
they? They're
Yeah.
supposed to come up with that much money in defense
Schools
of
will
the
suffer.
person. In defense, it's crazy. I don't understand our world anymore. Can
City
somebody
streets
explain
will
it to me?
suffer.
Let's explain to you, Lucy.
Yeah,
I
I
wish
mean-
I could.
yeah. It just makes me so angry. That's why I tried not to rant while Murder Sheet was here.
Yes.
Like, don't
They
get
were
me
so
started.
lovely. They're
I
such
was
a-
very lovely.
They-
There was
They
I
are.
didn't even
It's
say a
sweet
bad
couple.
word. I was very good at that.
You were a good
And it was-
girl, honey.
It was so cute how they like checked with each other, too. If you noticed that, if you watched
Oh,
the
they're
replay or
sweet
whatever.
together.
Yeah, they would like cross check each other too. It was so cute. I was like, man, that's
Well,
so
what's
awesome.
funny is they look at each other like who's gonna sweep, but it's always going to be Anya.
Oh, they're so cute.
They
really
are very sweet, genuine people.
Yes.
Love them to
very.
death. Yeah.
Love
Very
their
down to
podcast.
earth. Very down to
Their
earth.
podcast is amazing.
Yes.
And again, all of the cases they cover. It's not just, Delphi. They do an amazing job on all the cases they cover. The JFK. Oh my.
Yeah, did you
I
guys-
started to listen to that one.
Oh,
I love JFK stuff. I love all
Me
the
too.
conspiracy stuff.
me
Yeah,
too.
well,
They're
hopefully
amazing.
I'll get them to come back and we can talk about some other cases that they covered because there is a lot.
You know what
Um,
one? Gary
yes.
Webb. That's the one that I'm really into. Have been into for a long time. If you don't know who it is, look him up. Gary Webb, the old San Francisco. What's that newspaper called? It's the San Francisco newspaper. I can't remember what it was called, but yeah.
The San Franciscan. No, I'm just
No, it's like
kidding.
The San Francisco
Sorry.
Times.
rice roni.
Sorry,
San
CJ. I feel like we're on
Francisco
your show instead for a moment there. Sorry.
Oh, that's an age thing.
I was lost.
The San Francisco treat. No, no, Gary Webb. It's that's a conspiracy right there. I mean, that's a big one. They paid for his private investigator.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We're paying for all
The
his
poor community.
expert witnesses. All of his expert witnesses.
Yeah, I don't think the bullet's enough, Grizz.
Even though it is important, though. I mean, that's
I just
important
well, it's like
but
experts have stated, like it could have dirt in a different spot and it can create different markings when it's just ejected.
Angel Bear, I bet you my feeling is we're not going to have a trial for Keegan Klein. I think it's already going to all be negotiated out, and I think they're going to go to pretrial and they're going to say, we've already negotiated out, we've negotiated down to this and this and this.
Yeah.
And
Unfortunately.
I would say that the negotiation parts on that at least would probably be if he tried to share, if he shared it with anybody, who else had access. Usually in those types of CSAM cases, they try to let those get people's accounts and they go in with their password and they wait to see who else is accessing stuff.
Yeah.
So if he had a Dropbox that other people were accessing, they're going to look at it. But I feel like they're going to have it all worked out by time
we'll think
the
how many
pretrial is
charges
done.
they've already dropped on him through
Oh,
the
yeah.
stuff. I mean,
And it-
multiple-
They gave him, he's given them something for them to be willing to drop
Oh,
that
yes.
already.
yes, they wouldn't just
So-
drop those for no reason. So,
And
they
who
got
says
something.
his deals aren't done yet either? You know, they
Oh.
could
No,
keep
that's why
going
I
and
asked the
going
question.
and
Could we be
going.
talking in the background about that,
Right.
about the other charges?
I think
Which
I think
what
RA
we
could
have
make a
to
deal.
be.
Like
I mean,
said,
okay, so let's all reasonably think about this. Don't we have to be? Why were they checking the river? That's not
Absolutely.
CSAM related, right?
Right.
Why
yeah.
are we moving him out of custody to state police custody and flying him over to a federal base? Come on, people.
exactly.
That's not
For
about
no-
CSAM.
For no, he deserved a day out. You know what the heck?
Yeah.
No, no. No,
Yeah,
he
I
wasn't
don't-
getting a joyride that day.
Right.
Whereas I don't think they ever
Go
had
take a
either
splash.
good DNA or the DNA we were thinking of.
Yeah.
Right? I just don't think that was ever possible, because I think this would have been ended a long time ago if we had DNA.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's the movie, Kelt. That's a great. I'm telling you, you guys. That's a topic
Well,
right there. I'm
See,
telling
now I'm sorry.
That's a
I could
topic.
disagree on the DNA with you. And you know I love you dearly, JSD. But unless in CODIS there was DNA to match if they had it, and he didn't have any priors until they got him into custody. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't. You know what I'm? It wouldn't come up positive for anything. It's kind of like all these unsolved cases that are now coming to light. They've held on to the DNA for 40 years. Finally, they get matches because family members will come forward and all of the, the CODIS is up and it's, more people's DNA is going into the, I don't want to say 21andMe and all that stuff, but, the other programs and stuff like that. So I don't necessarily agree with that statement. Sorry. That I'm a little indifferent on the DNA. Sorry. Just in my opinion.
No, I just, I said a long time ago, if there was real DNA, this would be over. This would be over.
I feel the
6
same way.
years.
We agree to disagree. That's why we love each other.
Exactly. That's
She
what
knows
makes
I
it
love
beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate Evil CJ. I appreciate you helping with the chat and everything while we're up here. And
No
if you
problem. I
have not,
appreciate you.
you guys should check out Evil CJ's show. He has. Have you announced your new schedule yet?
No, I haven't had. I'm still on the same one. I'm still thinking.
Okay.
It'll be a process. But
I agree
Yeah.
with you, Angel Bear. I think that is a possibility.
Yeah,
Again,
it
that's
could be.
in my opinion.
hmm It
I
could
agree
be.
with. I don't know if you see Angel Bear's
Oh,
JST or not.
It very well could be.
Very possible.
true.
But
True.
I still agree with Justice. If there was some concrete slap the gavel, yeah, it would have. Things would be moving a little quicker, I think, too.
Yeah.
Anything's possible. We've seen
Yeah.
that all along with this case.
I'm just ready for
unfortunately.
this stuff to start. That's what I'm ready for.
Yeah. That I have.
If
a
they can
feeling
get a
long
jury.
way-
You know?
If Keegan goes ahead and has his pretrial, ends the case, that we're gonna be waiting a long time before Richard
Yeah.
Allen or anything else. But I hope they do get who else it is that they're looking for, right? I do hope that information and people, it's all about people coming forward and speaking
Absolutely.
about that. And you've got to be willing to just tell the police what you know. They do allow anonymous stuff like that, and I mean, that's why it's good that we have the resources of the murder sheet too. If you want to speak anonymously and give a tip, if it's important, please, you got to speak to the police first. But then you can speak to them as well. It's good things. I mean, heck, if you're scared and you know something and you want to reach out, I mean, even here, but you know what? All I would advise you is the same thing, is that you really need to reach out to the police and share your information. So, but
And they have
I
an
think
anonymous tip line too. So
I love doing this. We're keeping an eye on everything here. We're watching what's going on for court cases and what's being sealed, open, or whatever. I'm hoping some more things will be opened soon, like the second Klein search warrant. I want to see that. There's a lot still out there, but and I'm glad that my friends from the murder sheet were able to join us and able to share with them, you guys. And I appreciate Mama Bear and Paige and KA and Evil CJ and everybody. And please go check out Evil CJ's show. And
Thank you, Justice.
I appreciate you being up here.
Oh, I appreciate
yes.
you.
Thanks
Appreciate you
for
guys.
coming up with us, CJ.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And we'll see. You got a show tonight? What's today? Monday?
Monday. I don't know. We'll see. I might do a surprise. We'll see. I got to do some logo stuff with Kitties.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
all that
right.
stuff up there. Yeah, get it going.
Got to get that
All
logo
right.
done.
Thank you so much. I
All right.
appreciate
You put
you
your
guys.
link down there.
What
You
an amazing show.
can
Yes.
follow. Thank you so much.
Murder Sheet, you and myself. That's it.
Yep.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys.
All right. I'll
Thank
see you
you,
later
Janet.
tonight then, I guess.
Bye, CJ.
Maybe.
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 All
That'd
right.
be a surprise. Later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, CJ.
Well, thank you,
Well,
Mama Bear, for being up here.
Thanks, JSD. I appreciate it, honey.
And,
And
we'll keep
I
an
will
eye
talk
on
to you
stuff.
later.
All right.
will.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, guys, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. We'll keep you informed. I'll check when I can have Anya and them back again if you guys would like it. If you have more questions about the Delphi case you want asked from them, please let me know. I'll go ask the questions and find out for you. That's not a problem. Get their opinions about it. Definitely ask them about coming back on again. And we can even talk about some more cases that we have, especially some that are here in Indiana. The Burger Chef was definitely one. So I really appreciate you guys a lot. And, thank you again for being here. Please subscribe and hit that like button. I'm bad at doing that. I just finally remembered. Mama Bear will be happy. I'm trying to reach that 500. We're giving away a 6-month subscription to Discovery Plus. That includes the ID channel. I know you want that. I'm not a monetized channel. I just like to do the information and help out cases. I do have some updates coming for Deborah Fulton that we did, and I'm still waiting to hear from the detective for the Joseph Spisak. That's why that keeps getting pushed back. But as soon as we get that all cleared up, I will let you guys know. Thank you again. Appreciate you, and thank you very much for making sure that justice is served daily. Bye, everybody.